We addressed in the video on the module 730 Parts Dock Operations the handling of cargoes and its diversity. In this module, we shall focus on the essential issue around the control of stocks of cargoes, goods, as well as their parking. This control is primarily aimed at getting to know what there is at the park at any time for our controlling purposes and to inform our customers, customs, and other entities online, being able to access the history of what has been at the park, being able to access the planned occupation of the park in the near future, being able to bill out the time period of the various types of cargo spent at the park in accordance with agreed budgets proposals, and providing whole systems for handling cargo stocks and safety, with alerts in order to avoid undue entries at and departures from the park, exchanges of cargoes and other similar mistakes, and damages to cargoes by accident, their incorrect conditioning in parking times. The next slide helps us to picture these issues better.
One important aspect to be taken into consideration when controlling parks is that they are often only areas limited by markings on the floor, or something even more informal than that. As we can see, there are only spots, islands, which are the parks themselves. This type of delimitation, besides being obviously cheap, corresponds to the needs of traffic of vehicles and cargoes, and adaptation of spaces for all types of cargoes. So what is at stake is fundamentally marking the park boundaries somehow, and then controlling entries and departures. It is important to establish an encoding system for marking. In this case, there is an A, meaning it is a place of the pier or terminal A. A B, meaning it is the park area island B. 0102 to indicate a position, like coordinates 0102. And finally 0, meaning it refers to the level 0 at these coordinates, since there are cargoes, containers for instance, which can be stacked at several levels. Parking control is not usually done at an entrance or traditional office gate, but when unloading and loading at the park premises. Therefore, both parking control and stock control arise automatically from the berthing operations involved in parking operations, such as the ones referred to in the video on the module 730. When operations involving unloading at the park and delivery of cargoes are registered, the locations at the park are also registered, with positive movements meaning unloading at the park, reception, and negative movements meaning deliveries, dispatch. It is based on the combination of such movements that we know at all times which stocks are at the park. An important issue to be taken into consideration is the identification of cargoes at the park, what they are, whom they are consigned to, etc. There are cases in which the control is done per unit, and the units themselves already have a unique identifier assigned to them at the source, that is, one that is not given at the time the operation is taking place. This is the case of automobiles, certain cargoes such as coils, and obviously containers. Thus, we always know everything about the cargo at issue through this code when inserted into the system. In cases in which cargoes do not have a unique identifier from the start, one solution is using marks on the ground, parking terminal. For example, the cargo placed on the spot AA0101. When the cargo was unloaded, that number was recorded in the unloading operation. So by introducing this number into the system, everything can be known about that given cargo. However, there are situations in which this identification based on the location is not enough to identify the cargoes well, or whenever a stricter control is required. For instance, a control that prevents a certain cargo to be moved from one location to another by mistake and therefore gets lost in the process. In this case, a solution would be to identify the cargoes by a unique number that already exists in the system. Well, all cargo operations have been registered by a security code, as explained in the video on the module 730. Such a security code can be used to somehow mark the cargoes with labels containing that number and date, for example. By entering this code in the system or any mobile device, it is possible to know all about that cargo right away. For the cases where there are no mobile devices at hand, it is still possible to issue a statement on the cargo through the system, which can be laminated and safely attached to the cargo, thus allowing everything to be known by means of direct visualization of the statement data.
As we have just seen, the issue around parking can be quite complex and comprehensive. But with regard to the application control, the essential part can be found in the base menu of this module. One of the relevant issues concerning parking movements has to do with the location of the cargoes. To this end, there must be some very important settings in advance. Particularly, there must be a proper mapping of the park, along with a coordinate system, settings of the way how the various cargoes are going to be identified at the park, criteria for efficient allocation of spaces, taking into account not only the use of physical space themselves, but also an easy movement of cargoes, their proper storage, as well as the time spent on waiting a particular space to be occupied. In terms of applications, let us see the essence of what we have at the outset, without impairing specific adaptations to the needs of each part. In particular, it must be taken into consideration that we have a tool for the visual planning of the park. It is our module 755 Parts, View of the Park. It is a module that demands study and adaptation to each particular part. This is not so with the following features, which are adaptable to any part, as they are more abstract.
Let us access the Places option and select the places of Pier A. And here they are. Pier A consists of two parks, Park A and Park B. The Park A of the pier is composed of cells measuring 20 by 20 meters. AA01010 at ground level, therefore, AA01011 at level 1 above the previous one, therefore, AA01020 and AA01030. Then follow the cells of Park B, and so on. This is the type of mapping of our park. Now let us see the allocation of spaces, that is, their forecasts of occupancy and actual occupation. As we shall see, there is not much difference, only the occupation dates and a code indicating it is an actual occupation or a forecast reservation. Accessing Place Allocation, we see 3 cells in Park A occupied with marble blocks of demo ship org. We also see the code ***, which means this is a forecast reservation for these dates. As we notice, 10 blocks are expected to arrive on February 25th and be placed on this cell, 8 on the 26th, 8 on the 28th, and everything is dispatched on March the 4th. Now, there is a cell for Park B reserved for coils, which also belong to demo ship org. This reflects the essential part regarding the issue of place allocation. Nevertheless, there are two additional options regarding the occupation of places under a different perspective. The perspective we have just seen is from the arrangement of the space itself, in which the adjacent cells are listed per park. What we are going to see next is the spaces occupied per customer operation, and the spaces occupied per port call. Let us see this per customer operation. As noted, the information is arranged per customer. Highlighted on the left is demo ship org. Then, for this customer, there is an operation, 515, which is assigned to port call 142, customs counter mark 382/11, ship Shirkan Sea. This operation has reserved cells from 24 to 31 at Park B. This other operation, 674, however, has reserved 3 cells of Park A. If we go on now to see the locations per port call, we can see in here the information oriented per port call. Highlighted on the left is the port call 98, customs counter mark 255/11, ship Grand Scandinavia. For this port call and ship, there are 3 cells at Park A. And that is it. The issue around spaces ends here. Remember that we can start out with a simple allocation addressing large areas instead of small cells.
The issue around entries at and departures from the park is crucial, since they have to do with either determining what is in stock at any given time at the park, or with the need for such entries and departures to meet certain security, customs, and other requirements. A very important aspect is that a park is not an enclosed space in a port, having well-defined entrances and exits. In fact, a park is, as we have seen, a group of islands within the port, where cargoes are deposited largely under the open sky, and often within informal delimitations. For the reasons stated above, the entries at and departures from the park are, first of all, records in the system that must be done safely and accurately and in real time if possible. These records shall be done in the module 730, Dock Operations, with the safety code and the online tracking by the Customs Office or whoever is assigned to it. Regarding this module, what is at issue is an accurate log of all that entered and left the park, so as to be checked at any time by anyone authorized and interested, particularly by customs officials.
Let us take a look at entries and departures. Let us check the recent entries and departures of demo ship org. And here is an operation with coils. Pay attention to this code as it identifies the nature of the operation. Let us place the cursor over "-c to get some explanation. Exit, destination, customer. Minus is for exit, dispatch, and C is for customer. And here on the right is the cell AA01010, where this coil will come from and which, as we have seen before, comes from the ship Nestor. If we scroll down this list, we see a +C in a different color. Let us check its meaning. Entry, destination, customer. This is how all entries and departures, dispatches, are identified. A very important issue is customs information. This is a subject that will be deepened in the module about customs. However, it should be noted that here are vital information about these entries and dispatches, to which the Customs Office has access to as well. As we can see, this is community coils. supported by the document MAC 2021. Let us move on now to stocks at the park.
The control of stocks cargoes at the park at any time is essential, whether to inform third parties, bill out, and so on. To this end, the system offers facilities organized based on the major types of cargoes when it comes to control stocks. In other words, control per weight and/or number of items, control per units along with the unique identification of them, and control per container, a type of globally standardized stocks. That's what we shall see next.
Let us check the first option regarding stocks, where they are controlled in terms of quantity weight. Let's now request the port call 19 with regard to demo ship org. As we can see, the information is arranged in 3 areas. We start here on the left with the quantities in terms of batch or lot. This is the entire batch. In this case, there is a cargo of 34 polymetal coils on line 2. Here follows the quantity in terms of what has already been unloaded from or loaded onto the ship. In this case, 34 coils have already been discharged. On the right is what has already been unloaded and picked up by the customer or delivered by the customer for shipment. We notice here that only 26 coils out of 34 have been delivered to the customer. In the center we see what is at the park. In other words, what is still at the park between the ship and the customer, or vice versa. For instance, on line 2, there are at the park 8 coils that still remain to be delivered. Now the cargo on lines 1 and 3 is not at the park, and has already been delivered to the customer. Thus, with these 4 areas, we can control in real time not only the stocks at the park, but also what has been loaded on, unloaded from the ship, and what has been unloaded and picked up by the customer or delivered by the customer for shipment. This is essential information in terms of port management and answers questions such as: how much of the cargo is to be manipulated? Right now, how much has been loaded on or unloaded from the ship? How much is at the park? And how much has already been delivered or picked up by the customer? We can see these 2 options for cargoes controlled in terms of units identified by unique codes and for containers as well. In this option, there is a typical situation with units controlled by unique code, which is the case of automobiles. Let us check the port call 20 with regard to the customer demo car org. As noticed, the information is arranged as mentioned before. We can see that, in this case, there is a line per vehicle, and that the one on line 1 is not at the park. It has already been delivered to the customer. But the vehicles on lines 2 and 3 are still at the park. They remain to be delivered to the customer, as we can see by looking at this empty area. This is very similar when it comes to containers. Let us see the port call 24 for the customer demo containers org. We can notice that, in this case, there is a line per container and that, for instance, the container on line 5 is still at the park, remaining to be delivered to the customer, as we can see. On the other hand, the containers on the other lines are not at the park and have already been delivered to their customers.
As we have seen in these facilities, there is a strict control of stocks. However, we have not come across anything that values those stocks in terms of parking values, which should be built out. Effectively, the issue around these values is generally not accessible at the production stage. In the module 715, Parts Billing, we shall see how this real-time information about the stocks is valued and billed out. We have presented in this video the module 740, Parts, Stocks, Parking, along with the necessary details for the first assessment by your organization. It should be emphasized that the implementation can be carried out in stages. We can start out, for instance, with control of stocks as stocks at the park, leaving the issues regarding the allocation and optimization of spaces for a later date. This will immediately allow us to know what is at the park and what is to be built out. We remind you that this dialogue can be deepened so we can better analyze your needs and our answers to them. We and the network of partners that we integrate are fully prepared to listen to and support you.